if I may, I think it's also important that we consider the things that we're calling medical devices and the types of vulnerabilities. So when people talk about medical device vulnerabilities and when they talk about the number of, say, viruses that have been found on hospital quote medical devices, it's very important to tease out what was found and what was analyzed. Very often the analysis is of Windows computers, typically Windows computers, of course, the most popular, and there are vulnerabilities that are well known in Windows computing platforms. And so the vulnerabilities may have been found on desktop computers or laptop computers that are hosting medical software. And the medical software is, by definition, a medical device if it's used to diagnose or treat a patient. So when those are discovered and when we think about that, we should be categorizing that information as appropriate. So think about those vulnerabilities differently than the vulnerabilities, say, in embedded medical devices. So that's a distinction that's usually lost in publicly shared information because, frankly, you could talk about thousands of vulnerabilities that were found. And, whereas when one looks at other medical devices that are not as vulnerable, the numbers would drop quite a bit more. Well, yes. Now, so let's dig into that a little bit. So there could be a Windows-based desktop system or laptop, whatever, that's irrelevant, that might be network connected. The purpose of the network connectivity might be to look up patient information from the hospital system, the patient's name and so forth, and pull that into the test as it's being performed. So maybe that device is an ultrasound machine, for example. So the ultrasound machine would be pulling information from a hospital system, a system usually called the ADT system. It could be another one. That allows them to combine the patient information and demographic information and so forth with the test information. And so now we have a complete report. And then it may send that report into a hospital server, of course, for analysis and storage and so forth. So what are the risks on a system like that? Well, we could think about it different ways. But imagine, just have a mental image of that kind of system of vulnerabilities that might be there. If there are problems with a hospital network, it could affect the ability of that device to pull the patient information and combine it with the test information. So that's a possibility. If there are other problems with the network, it may prevent the data from being uploaded and analyzed, say by the specialists who are in another physical location who need access to that information. But those things may not in any way affect the quality of the test itself. It may not affect the ultrasound software. It may not affect any other aspect of the test. It may, I suppose, I haven't heard of any vulnerabilities that can do that and affect ultrasound equipment, but perhaps that day is coming. So in a sense, we can conceptually separate medical device function of a device from information transmitting functions of a device. The medical device function, in this case, is the ultrasound. It's the quality of the ultrasound, the availability to perform the ultrasound test and read it on the dedicated screen. Then there's the data transmission or health IT aspect of the device, which is kind of the difference between that front end and back end of the device. And the back end is sending and receiving data for other purposes. Now, if there's a loss of availability of the health IT related data, it could prove to be a substantial problem because it could prevent performing the test. There are some devices that won't allow you to perform a test without entering patient data, for example. So it could cause serious workflow problems, or it could delay diagnosis and treatment. But conceptually, we should separate the medical device function from the data communication or interoperability function of the data.